Well. 70 kilometers running, that's quite a lot. I don't know if I should recommend it.
I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm...
Welcome back, everyone, to Season 1, Episode 10. My name is Georg, and I'm your host for the Nomadic Business Insights podcast. In this podcast, listeners have the opportunities to follow my journey as a venture capitalist. And we're also from time to time doing exclusive deep dives with other founders, highly talented venture capitalists, and people from other exciting industries. In today's episode, we're gonna start a quite exciting chapter, a sequel I've been wanting to do for a long time, a sequel about young leadership. And this is a topic that is quite hard for a lot of people to grasp, but it interests many more people than you believe. So I thought, why not lay out all my experience that I've gathered on the way and also talk with some of the people that are closest to me and hear what they have to share about the topic. The people and concepts we feature in this program have by no means paid for any commercial placement, and they're handpicked by the Nomadic business team. We may or may not have any personal investments in the products or companies we feature, and this content is not to be seen as any direct investment advice. The show is for entertainment purpose only, and let's get started with this episode.
You are listening to LD Podcast. Would you like to publish with us? Tell us your story at www.ld.studio/podcasts. Edited and published by LD Studio.
It's really exciting to be back with a new episode, and I promise I am gonna smash it here. There is a lot of content that you guys want to listen into, and this episode and the following sequel will hopefully provide you with quite a bit of good guidance. Currently, I am again back at my parents' house in Vestnes at the Norwegian West Coast, and we're preparing for a fall in Ålesund, where we're gonna spend a couple of last months in one of our apartments there just to enjoy all the work we've put into it before we head over to North Norway. And as you might know, we bought a property in Lofoten, which is a half island far in the north of Norway, and we're gonna move there, me and Sylvia and our daughter Sakira, in just by New Year 2025. It is gonna be a tough time up there because we have a whole house to tear apart and reconstruct and build up again into our dream family house. Recently, I've shared a lot of content around this on my Instagram, so if you're excited to see more about that project, head over to my Instagram to see some of the sketches of the house that we're planning to put up. It is gonna be a massive construction. It's gonna take a long time. We're probably talking 2 to 3 years building time, and I honestly don't know if I'm too excited about that time. But a job has to be done, and we are really excited to finally have found our base in the Nordic countries. At least we believe it to be so. I'm sitting here, the summer weather is currently kind of fading away here in Norway. We're mid-August, and the whole of July and a lot of June we have spent out in a Norwegian mountain recording a documentary series for the Norwegian television called Gullnøkkelen, the Golden Key. I spoke a bit about it in the recent episodes, and we're also going to speak much more about it once the whole series is ready for release. But right now, it actually feels quite good to be back in a house with a shower, with a kitchen. We've spent around 40 days in nature, hiking from cabin to cabin through the Norwegian mountains, and we've covered over 250 kilometers with our daughter, Sakira. And to be honest, I have been really excited to get back in front of the cameras, back in the studio to record new podcasts, because during this fall, we have made sure that we have so many exciting guests coming up into this show. I just honestly can't wait to have them all on and share their stories, their ideas, and their experience with you guys. And if you yet haven't checked our other podcast, The Nomadic Parents, I really recommend you to do so. We have now launched over 10 months of Sakira's life, in-depth episodes about where we've been, what we have experienced, and her development stages. and she's soon turning 1 year old, which is a quite exciting milestone for us as a family. And we're gonna make sure to make a feature episode on her 1 year birthday. So if you haven't yet, go out, follow us on Instagram, because we're gonna be publishing my stories in the upcoming weeks where you can ask us questions which we're gonna answer in that 1 year anniversary episode. And we have also decided to continue the Nomadic Parents Show. We will be keeping on publishing episodes there at least every second month throughout the next years, where we will be following Sakira growing up. Well, enough about that podcast. Let's focus about our current topic in Nomadic Business Insights. And as I just mentioned for you in the introduction, we are gonna talk about young leadership. And I've also been publishing some of my stories on my Instagram. And one of our followers sent us a question that I personally found very intriguing. The question was, when was the toughest leadership moment you had? And when did it happen? And I think that's a very exciting question, and it really allows us for a deep dive. So thank you, Carla, for sending in that question. I've already responded you in DM, and we'll be sending you one of our brand new Norway merch collections. So really excited for you and all the others who sent questions. Thanks for getting back to us with the questions. We will try to answer some of them and keep on in future episodes to ask questions, because we'll be continuing to giving out that merch. It's something we're really proud of, and a brand new design. The last design we made in 2022 sold out. We've been restocking. It's sold out again. We've been restocking. So it's really cool to see everyone excited about the products we put out. And before we dive into this episode's topics, I just wanted to let you know about our upcoming fall. We're obviously starting the business season again. So we have several new employees coming in. We're really excited. And if any one of you are listening to this episode, just know that we hopefully gonna do our very best to bring you in the warmth of our companies. And I really hope that you're gonna enjoy the first months. I think everyone has some exciting things to look up to, especially at LD Studio. We're again scaling, we're taking the concept further, we're taking on more communication clients again and expanding our horizon out of Norway. More news about that in September and October. And obviously, me and Axel will also be back with more episodes regarding how to boost your personal sales strategy. Well, leadership is a tough topic, and I'm not going to be able to cover all of it in this single episode. I'm pretty much just gonna peek at the top of the iceberg, opening the deck of cards for you, and maybe help you find moments of inspiration that you feel you want to know more about. But first of all, I thought I wanted to bring you up on speed what you can expect from this episode and the following young leadership episodes. Because as I mentioned, we're gonna make a sequel, and I can confirm that we're already planning 4 episodes. Maybe there are gonna be more, maybe not, but at least 4 episodes. And in this episode, I am alone, but in all the future episodes, we're gonna have guest speakers with us. And first of all, this sequel about young leadership is about establishing leadership in all senses. Because it doesn't really matter if you are an employee or an employer or you run a solo project. Everyone needs leadership qualities, at least everyone that want to move on, doing career steps and climbing those ladders. So in this episode, we're not only going to talk about leadership qualities as an actual leader in the company, but we'll also look into leadership qualities as a general human being. And talking about that, I'm gonna take the opportunity to leverage some of my personal experience and tell a bit more about my own story and how I became a leader at such a young age. Furthermore, I'll be sharing some do's and don'ts, which I have learned the tough way on my own journey. And I'm also gonna use the time in future episodes to validate those inputs and thoughts with some of my guests. In the following episodes, we're gonna talk with a very good friend of mine that for years has made his way up in a pharma tech company in Norway. And he has worked with some of the most experienced and talented leaders in the industry here in Scandinavia. And he's also himself more and more becoming a trusted leader in the company. So we're gonna talk about his perspective and how it's been for him to meet a lot of leaders and which kind of skills he has been picking up on. In a later episode, we're also going to meet one of my first and oldest mentors that is currently building one of the most exciting simulation companies that I think there exists in this world at this stage. This person has for years been in need of young talent and young leaders, and together with him, we'll be deep diving a bit more into what he's looking for when he recruits those persons. And ultimately, we're gonna speak with a person that is kind of midway in his career and has built a lot of successful companies and ultimately and automatically become a very important leader himself. So as you hear, they're both exciting topics and fascinating guests to meet, and I'm just burning to get this all started. Please remember, this is not a professional deep dive, and this is merely a reflection of people's experience and also my own personal view. At a later stage, we're going to publish our own leadership training program aimed at young people in the age of 18 to 25 years old. So if you're interested to join that program, you just follow our channels and stay updated. It will come very soon. We're currently already working on it, so hopefully it will be released very soon. First and foremost, I want to speak with you about my personal entry point into leadership. As you know, I started my first company when I was 17 years old. But at that point, I didn't really have any employees. But I entered leadership way before that, because already at a school level, in the age of 13, 14 years old, I led a lot of the projects that we were doing. And that brings us to a point that I think is very important, because leadership is not necessarily about the position you have, more about the way you act in a group. Let's take a very simple example. A teacher hands out a task. The teacher puts the pupils together in groups of 4 and lets the group start working. A natural leader will ultimately take the word first and start to establish some sort of direction. And I think leadership really boils down to direction. It is not necessarily about taking the word first or speaking the loudest or being the most dominant, but it is about seeing direction before anyone else and having other people believe in that direction. And this brings us to a very dangerous misconception, because a leader doesn't necessarily have to invent direction himself. So we're not any sort of politician that is vouching and gaining confidence through speak and vouching other people. We're talking about sensing the direction for the whole team, the product, or the company, and putting it into a clear strategy. That can might as well be through interviewing different people and getting to know more about where they want to go, or where owners want to go, or where stakeholders want to go. But ultimately, a leader needs to put down some sort of direction. And I was already quite used to this at a young age. I've always found it easy to see a long-term direction and in my head divided into steps. So already in sort of school tasks or free time project, I was putting the direction of the teams. And it was also at that point, which I've spoken about in previous episode, that I realized that I probably never will be a good employee, but have to start my own companies and be my own leader. Because I knew that at 17, 18 years old, I would not enter the professional work life at the level I wanted to enter it and be a leader. So I was left with very few options than to start my own companies. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that I, at a very early age, started to navigate both myself and other people. And I think for you listening into this, if you're just starting your work life and you have an employment that you're committed to, but you already know or have an eager about that you want to become a leader or gain more leadership qualities, then I think the very first step is start questioning what you're doing and start to sense the overall direction. And instead of always just executing the orders or the tasks that you get, try maybe to setting the tasks in a bigger context and see if you can innovate some of the processes or if you can suggest change, or if you can bring other people on board in the company to pull the same direction. Because it is obviously difficult if you're just coming into a work life, you're under an employment and you're getting very strict and clear tasks to do. You should act quite careful whether to move out of those tasks and use your time for other things, because ultimately it might make your employer frustrated with you. But there is always room for a wiggle. And trust me, as an employer, the best we know are people that seek improvements themselves. Fast forwarding a bit into the future, at the age of 21 years old, I started to employ my first people. And this was in the communication industry. At that point, just kind of at a freelance level, but already in a way where we were establishing some sort of collegium or work environment, because we were working together on several occasions. And in retrospective, I see myself having quite a bit of misconceptions in terms of what makes a good leader. Remember, at that point, I had no real leadership experience from an adult work life, and everything I knew was kind of taken from books, from stories I'd read, or impressions I had. But that is some of the beauty of it, and luckily I'm here to tell you some of the mistakes I did so that you are not running into the same mistakes. First of all, I had the belief that I always need to rush, I always need to push, and I always need to inspire. Because when you're in movement, when something is happening or you want to acquire something, reach a goal, it is natural to go a bit into running mode. Maybe you want to surpass someone, maybe you want to make sure that you get there before someone else does. But the attitude of rush, push, and inspire, as I like to call it, can create a lot of tensity around you. And that tenseness might not work as well as it does on you, on your colleagues. Research shows that most of the time, colleagues find people that use the push, rush, and inspire strategy as quite stressful. They like to come to a place where things are in control and moving at a steady pace. Coming in there as a hurricane makes people take distance from you. And as a leader or someone that want to acquire leadership skills, that's not something you want. You want people to gather onto you like a rock. So the misconception I had is that I need to express my aspiration as a push, rush, and inspire strategy. Talking fast, talking direct, being upfront. But most of the times it will be counteractive. And I started to realize this when I started to talk slower, more calm. Instead of talking 3 years in future, I would talk 3 days in future. So I'm not saying that you should compromise your own ambitions, but filter them towards the others. Don't be too much. Be humble, be easy, and be relaxed. The second thing that was a massive misconception is that everyone would see my vision. And what I'm meaning when I'm saying this is that if I said, if we do that, and then we do that, we'll end up there. For me, it was clear, because I had maybe been dwelling on this for weeks, months, and I have a quite clear business strategy. But most of the time, the reality is that once you introduce someone to an idea, it takes up to 3 to 5 repetitions before they actually understand the framework of the idea. So instead of saying where we will end up in a very far future and focusing on that, maybe try to divert the task and make it easier to understand by saying what you're going to do tomorrow or what you're going to do next. Maybe you never ever have to tell the whole picture. And yes, it sounds a bit like lying, and I'm a big fan of clarity. So I'm always there saying what's the long-term ambition in this. But my general experience is that talking too much about a vision and where we're going to be in the future is going to scare people off more than it's going to inspire people. Last but not least, and maybe the toughest lesson that I've learned on the way, is that you cannot keep everyone. And this obviously is very important as an employer and an owner of a company, but it is also important as a colleague or an employee that tries to acquire leadership skills, because people are going to move about. People are going to change places where they work. People are going to express they're unhappy. And most of the time is nothing to do with you. That's just how work life is. And I think a lot of people coming into work life at 25, moving into 30s, are thinking it's like this paradise heaven where everyone is here to stay here and work together. But people will move on and about. And as sooner you realize that and start to build your success of your product, your company, or your responsibilities in the company you work on things that can be repeated, even though other persons move on, that's when you're going to start to succeed in the long run. Because once you start to rely too much on other people, staying around, everything will fall apart once they leave. Of course, we also know that one of the most important success factors for companies is having high retention rates of employees, which means keeping most of them for a long time, because nothing is more expensive than to onboard and train new people. But nevertheless, it doesn't change the fact that people are leaving. Ultimately, what am I taking away from these 3 misbeliefs that I had? Well, I'm going to give you 3 concepts that I work by today and have done for a couple of years, and they've massively changed the way my companies develop. The people who know me the closest know that I'm a huge believer of clarity. I'm always straight to the core. Whether it's negative or positive, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to be as clear, direct, and straight through as possible. But before, I tended to get loaded of emotions. So when I was very excited, I would show it. When I was disappointed, I would show it. One of the skills I've acquired in recent years is to try to hide my emotions. I'll say exactly what I mean about something, but I'll try to say it without emotions. So I'm not sugarcoating when someone is doing something I do believe to be underperforming, but I will try to say it with no negative feeling involved. And on the same way, when something positive happens, I'll try to praise it as an accomplishment, but I won't jerk off any extreme emotions that may lead to the person being more disappointed in another case when he doesn't get the same emotions. The second thing that I've made a common practice being a leader is always start with a praise. And this is something that has been massively difficult for me because it just doesn't come natural to me as a person. If I'm not feeling something is a major achievement, then there is no praise to receive. That's kind of why you're working here, or why we're working on this together, is to achieve this. So this should be the minimum success we should have. What I've learned the tough way, though, is that most people will take that as you being a negative person, never focusing about their accomplishments. So I've taken the lesson, and generally I'll always try to give a praise for something. Doesn't matter how bad it is or how good it is. I'll always try to focus on the positive things first. Even though if something is completely below the level of where you'd expect it, maybe you can say something nice to the person as, I'm really happy that you delivered. Let's have a look at it together. Or it's really nice to see your progression. I have a couple of more feedbacks that help you improve even more. So the lesson to be learned from this is you want to create motion. You want to help people towards a goal. You want to be a guider. You don't want to punish them and you don't want to drag them, but you want to open the doors for them so that they can improve. Because the best way your company or your team is going to improve is if everything is accelerating their learning curve. And ultimately, that's one of the most important responsibilities that you have as a leader, making sure that your team operates at the best possible level. And that includes confidence, happiness, all these kind of things that you may undervalue only focusing on your target. Last but not least, and I cannot underline this enough, remember, at the end of the day, we are all the same. We all have the same heart. We have a brain. We have feet. We have a health to take care of. We have a family. We have friends. At work, with that title, or that salary, it doesn't define us as human beings. So the best leaders I know are the people that truly, in their private life and their professional life, act as we are the same. With that level of respect, and believe me, it is actually difficult because at one place, people expect you to be a leader, take decisions, take a command, give feedback, be strict, be positive. You're supposed to be kind of this actor juggling all these emotions. And at the same time, you're supposed to lower yourself down and be the same as everyone. And nobody has said it's easy. It's super tough to be a good leader, especially at a young age, because you're building up a lot of experience throughout your lifetime that will shape you as a leader. But believe me when I say this, respect is the most single important thing that you can acquire as a leader. Because it doesn't matter how much motion or innovation or success you create if people don't stick to you. And people will stick if you're respectful, because then they have no real reason to abandon your ship or turn the back to you. So a small trick that I always use is, if you're feeling tense, if you're feeling irritated or agitated, like you're not happy and you're afraid that your emotion will take over as a leader, try to turn off all the switches and look at this person as someone you would just run into at the supermarket. You don't know the person you're talking to. How would you act to that person if you're to be the most respectful and the most polite yourself? And then try to act like that to your colleagues or your team. And that brings us into the next section of this episode, respect and ambiguity. On one side, I'm a big believer in clarity and being respectful, treating everyone as the same. But you gotta remember, especially the age group 20 to 30 years old are the most fluctuating, unsure, and rapidly changing people that you will ever meet. So if I can give you one major tip, don't employ people in that age group. If you have the chance to employ people above their 20s, I would say do it. Because people in the age group 20 to 30 years old, they go through so much change in their life, still figuring out what they really want to do and who they want to be, that most of the time you as a leader or you as a company will take the blame for it. Everything that goes wrong in their life, you will ultimately have the blame for it, because you are the source of income, the source of money. And that creates a lot of tension at the workplace. I personally learned this in several cases, especially talking about LD Studio, our communication agency. In the time from 2022 to 2023, we had massive uprisings in the company that were really hurtful, because ultimately we couldn't deliver our best product. And our clients saw this. So clients were pulling out. We didn't manage to achieve the growth rate that we wanted to, and we were throwing away massively time internally on conflicts. And at that point, I judged myself quite a bit. I had very diverse responsibilities in not only that company, but many other companies. And I found it really hard to focus my own time. And when you are in a hurtful position, especially as a leader, it's going to be tough when people come with personal complaints to you. So as a leader, you really have to learn to be loved and to be hated. And that is one of the things that I tell a lot of people. What is the single most hardest part of being a good leader at a young age? Building up the resistance to know that someone will always be out there hating you. And that is where I think my mountaineering and extreme sport background has helped me massively. I'm not saying this is my advice for you, that if you want to become a good leader, you have to do climbing or skiing or surfing. But I do think all the tension I put myself under on a private level, talking about crossing big mountain ranges, climbing very difficult things, swimming through ice cold water, these kind of experience, they have a different type of pressure. We're not talking about work-related or income-related pressure. We're talking about pressure that doesn't have to be there, because you're taking this active choice yourself. And that kind of pressure builds up resistance. And resistance is something that I like to talk a lot about, both in my shows and to my employees, because resistance is ultimately what is gonna take you the furthest. If you are used to give more than the people around you, it will automatically take you further than them. And also resistance will help you protect your inner self in the moments where you feel really hated, because you've been through tough places. So if I can give you one suggestion for building resistance, is try to expose yourself to tough moments outside of work. And sport or outdoor and nature is often very helpful at this. As I said earlier, people will always move on. People are changing employers, people are changing jobs. And if you accept this at an early age, then you will be managing to build processes and ideas that are not hanging on people or that are not hanging on individuals only. My general advice would be believe in people, believe in your team, but don't put all your cards in one or two persons. The only way you're gonna build success stories is to bring people together. But look at it as a whole pizza. You always need to prepare to replace that pizza slice that goes out. So personally, I'm always making sure that all my companies have recruitment backups, because once you get shorthanded and the house starts tilting, that's when you need to shove in that other rock that you have backed up. Amazing, guys. We're coming to an end here. It's time to answer Clara's question. What has been the single most toughest leadership experience in your young career? And Clara, I have the answer for you. Right now, I am 29 years old, but 4 years back in time, when I was 25, is that right? Yes, 25 years old. We just opened our studio in Ålesund. We had opened our studio in Kristiansund. We're at that time, I think, 10 people in the agency. And there was a massive general complaint that Georg, as the CEO, is pissing everyone off with his negativity. And actually, it went 3 months, and every leadership meeting we had, it was one of the main topics. How can you, Georg, become more positive? And I remember it was a massive uprising and a massive issue in the company, because it really hurt me on a personal level. I felt I was already giving everything. I felt I was really running in the project and trying to make sure that everyone had the best possible time at work, but still people were experiencing me as being super negative. I remember one of the persons that really stood up for me and helped me in that period was Saya, the studio leader in Kristiansund. We had a lot of deep dive talks where we analyzed my conversation with other employees, how I was responding to them and how I was talking to them. And the worst was actually, I didn't really feel that I had the capacity to improve, because all my capacity was restrained to solving critical tasks that have to be solved in terms of delivering our products. And that is maybe one of the toughest experiences when you are thrown in a leadership position that you maybe didn't consider yourself to be in, because those who know me through the story of the beginning of LD Studio, I was never really wanting to be the CEO of the company, and we had several times tried to hire other CEOs, which is a completely different story, because some of them failed massively, and it was one of the biggest disasters in the whole company. But that's another story to be told. But I was the only one really doing the CEO job very well, but at the same time I didn't really want to have it, because all I wanted to focus on was creative development, in other words, art direction. So it was kind of those tweaky situations where at the one side I knew I had to change, but at the other I didn't know if I actually had the energy to change, if it makes sense. Eventually, after a couple of months though, we did some evaluations and we followed up with a couple of questionnaires, and it seemed like I actually solved it. And I do think those 3 key pillars that I was mentioning to you earlier in the episode played a very distinct role in it. And some of them are actually inspired by other great leaders, but some of the techniques I have to thank very good colleagues for. But more or less, don't hide who you are. Be straight towards and concrete on what you want, but hide your emotions. Always start with a praise, even though if you hate what you're seeing. And eventually, we're all the same. When we leave this workplace, we're all the same. We're just humans having a job and having a private life. And when I started to incorporate those values in everything I did, it started to become much better, and everyone started to have a whole nother relationship to me. And it was actually a quite beautiful story where people started to come up to me and say, it is quite impressive how you have changed being under so much pressure. So thank you everyone who helped me on that journey. Thank you, Saya, for spending so much time and standing up for me there. And also thank you, and Sylvia, who also was in the company, obviously, and also played a massive role in helping me out. That's it, guys. Respect is all. That's what you have to take with you from this first episode, from our Young Leadership sequel here at the Nomadic Business Insights podcast. I also wanted to mention some further readings for you. That is something that I wanted to incorporate in the podcast, but I've been having it a bit on hold, but we're going to start it now. And there are 3 things I want you to check out after seeing this episode. If you haven't read it yet or listened to it, you should absolutely listen to Steve Jobs' biography of how Apple was built and his early years of building Apple, because it brings in so many good momentums of how he had to change himself as a leader, and also in the phases where he was thrown off his own board of directors, how he had to change a second and a third time in his work career to adapt as a leader. Then there is a Norwegian book. I know there is a lot of Norwegian listeners to this podcast, so it might not be relevant for everyone, but there is a book called Sunt Bondevett på jobben from Amund Fjelstad. It is available as an audiobook, but you can also rent it in libraries here in Norway. Translated, it means like healthy farmer lifestyle at a workplace. And it is a book. Amund Fjelstad tells about many of his stories as a chairman, as a CEO, as a CTO, in leading global companies like Gartner Technology, for instance. So that's a book you should absolutely check out. And ultimately, I want to tips you about another podcast show that I'm spending a lot of time listening into, which is called Acquired, or AC2 by Acquired. They have 2 shows, and the 2 guys are super talented. One of them is a technologist, the other is a previous venture capitalist, and they're deep diving and interviewing some of the most experienced leaders and CEOs in the world. So check out the show Acquired on Spotify. They make amazing content, and you're going to learn tons. Remember, guys, after listening to this show, it is quite hard for me giving a good perspective from an employee side, as I've never really been an employee myself. And that's why in the next episode, in this sequel, we're going to invite one of my best friends who has been working in the same company for a lot of years and built up a lot of responsibilities there, becoming a leader of his own. So he will hopefully, and I'm pretty sure, share a lot more important insight from his journey. I'm looking forward to that. And on the last note, I just want to remind everyone to share and rate this podcast. We're growing quite fast. I'm excited to see the numbers because a lot of people are tuning in, especially on Spotify. We've been growing over 150% every month since launching in May 2024. So we're just getting started, and I promise you that this show is just going to improve week by week, and I hope that you enjoy listening as much as I'm making it. I also want to remind you that you can submit questions you have to the show or input on DM on my Instagram, or we have just released a new email for all the podcasts at LD Studio, so you can reach out at podcast@ld.studio. That's podcast@ld.studio. And Sylvia nudged me before making this podcast that I should remind everyone we're dropping new merch on LD Studio. So you already have our 2 existing collections from previous years there. We're now introducing the 3rd collection, which is called Visions. It's a really cool one. I'm really excited to wear mine, and you can now buy it and order it online at ld.studio. But you can also come to our shops, of course, LD Vintage. Just Google it up. If you're in Norway, check them out. Fall is here, and I am excited about having this business year getting started. I really feel loaded after a long summer holiday, and I hope you guys do too. I wish you the best wherever you are and whatever you do. For me, the next months, or actually just the next weeks, are gonna include quite a bit of travel. I'm gonna go several trips to Oslo. We're establishing some new client relationships there and recording some exciting podcasts. I'm going to the north of Norway to sign some contracts there and also visit our new property to do some measurements. And ultimately, in the end of September, we're going for a couple of weeks to Germany to see friends and family in Berlin. So if you're around Berlin or Dresden, reach out, send me a DM, and we can meet up for a coffee. That would be really cool. I always enjoy meeting new people if there's room and time for it. And yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, as usual, my name is Georg, and I am your host at the Nomadic Business Insights podcast. It has been my pleasure to host you. I'm sending you my best of energy and wishing you great success in whatever you do until you tune in again.
Thank you for listening to LD Podcast. We are continuously looking for the most talented innovators. No matter your background or expertise, shoot us an email at high5@ld.studio with your skills and portfolio.